In the heart of the town lies an abandoned asylum, its crumbling walls looming ominously against the night sky. Four friends, Emma, Alex, Lily, and Jake, embark on a dare to spend the night inside. As they approach, the moon casts eerie shadows on the broken windows. With trepidation, they push open the rusted gates and step into the asylum's courtyard. The air is heavy with the scent of decay, and the sound of their footsteps echoes off the crumbling walls. As they enter the main entrance, a chill runs down their spines. As they enter a long abandoned ward, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to echo through the halls. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an otherworldly chorus that sends shivers down their spines. Suddenly, they come face to face with a ghostly apparition, a spectral figure with hollow eyes and tattered clothing. Its ethereal form glides towards them, its movements hauntingly graceful. Frozen with fear, they realize they are in the presence of something not of this world. With a collective scream, the friends turn and flee from the asylum, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark hallways, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly whispers follow, urging them to return to the darkness. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the asylum, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They vow never to speak of their night in the abandoned asylum again, haunted by the whispers that linger in the darkness. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the asylum, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They vow never to speak of their night in the abandoned asylum again, haunted by the whispers that linger in the darkness.
In the heart of Blackwood Forest, a group of friends, Jack, Sarah, Luke, and Emma, embarks on a dare to explore the Forbidden Woods. As they enter the forest, tall trees cast long shadows, and a sense of foreboding hangs in the air. Pushing deeper into the forest, they follow a winding path that seems to disappear into the shadows. The air grows cooler, and strange noises echo through the trees. Despite their growing unease, they press on, driven by curiosity and adrenaline. Suddenly, they stumble upon a moonlit clearing, the ground littered with decaying leaves and gnarled roots. In the center stands an ancient, dilapidated cabin, its windows shattered and its doors hanging off their hinges. The air is heavy with the stench of decay. With trepidation, they approach the cabin and cautiously step inside. The interior is shrouded in darkness, the only light coming from their flickering flashlights. Cobwebs cling to the walls and the floorboards creak ominously beneath their feet. As they explore further, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to emanate from the walls themselves. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the cabin with an otherworldly chorus that sends shivers down their spines. Suddenly, a dark shadow materializes before them, its form shifting and twisting in the dim light. It looms over them, its eyes glowing with malevolence as it reaches out with ghostly hands. Frozen with fear, they realize they have awakened something ancient and sinister. With a collective scream, the friends flee from the cabin, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the forest, the shadows closing in around them as they run. Behind them, they can hear the echoing laughter of the darkness that lurks within Blackwood Forest. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from Blackwood Forest, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They vow never to return to the haunted woods, haunted by the shadows that lurk within its depths. Emily, a young historian, inherited the sprawling and ancient Ravenwood Manor from her eccentric great-uncle. She, along with her friends Jack and Lucy, arrived on a cloudy afternoon. The mansion was nestled deep in the woods, its grandeur overshadowed by an eerie silence. "This place is massive," Jack remarked, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "More like massively creepy," Lucy added, shivering as they crossed the threshold. Emily clutched the heavy iron key, a sense of foreboding settling in. "Let's explore and get settled in." Inside, the manor was a labyrinth of dusty rooms, antique furniture, and forgotten relics. They marveled at the grand staircase, the chandeliers draped in cobwebs, and the eerie portraits of ancestors long gone. "This place must have so many stories," Emily said, running her fingers over an old book on a shelf. In the attic, they discovered a locked chest. After some effort, they managed to pry it open, revealing a collection of old diaries and a peculiar-looking amulet. "What's this?" Lucy asked, holding up the amulet. It glowed faintly in the dim light. That night, they settled into their rooms. The manor was deathly silent, save for the occasional creak of the wooden beams. Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As she drifted off to sleep, she was jolted awake by the sound of whispering voices. She sat up, heart pounding, and saw a shadow move across her room. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. The whispering ceased and the room fell silent once more. Emily lay back down, but sleep eluded her. The next day, Emily and her friends decided to delve into the diaries they found in the attic. The journals belonged to various members of the Ravenwood family, detailing strange occurrences and ghostly sightings over the centuries. "Listen to this," Emily said, reading aloud. "Great Uncle Henry wrote about a family curse and mentions the amulet. It's supposed to protect the bearer from evil spirits." Jack frowned. "That explains the creepy vibes we've been getting." They continued reading, piecing together the dark history of the Ravenwood family and their connection to the supernatural. While exploring the basement, they found a hidden door behind a stack of old crates. The air was thick with a musty odor as they ventured inside, discovering an old ritual chamber filled with strange symbols and artifacts. "This must be where they conducted their rituals," Jack said, examining the symbols etched into the walls. Emily found a dusty book on a pedestal. "It's a book of spells and rituals. This might help us understand what's going on." As they examined the room, they heard a low growl emanating from the darkness. That night, the manor was alive with supernatural activity. Doors slammed, lights flickered, and ghostly apparitions roamed the hallways. The friends huddled together in the living room, fear gripping them. "We need to get out of here," Lucy said, her voice shaking. But as they tried to leave, the front door wouldn't budge. It was as if the house itself was trapping them inside. "We're stuck," Jack said, panic in his eyes. "What do we do now?" Emily clutched the amulet. "We have to find a way to break the curse." In the library, Emily found the banishment ritual in the book they discovered. As she began to recite the incantation, the temperature dropped, and a dark, menacing figure appeared before them. "You cannot banish me," it hissed, its form shifting and flickering. Emily's voice wavered, but she continued the ritual. The figure screamed in rage, its form destabilizing. "Keep going, Emily," Jack urged. The figure lunged at them, but a bright light emanated from the amulet, pushing it back. Emily completed the ritual and the figure disintegrated into a cloud of dark mist. The manor fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. The ghostly apparitions vanished, and the friends breathed a sigh of relief. "We did it," Lucy said, tears of relief in her eyes. As they prepared to leave, they noticed a portrait of Great Uncle Henry smiling down at them. Emily felt a sense of closure, knowing they had freed the manor from its curse. "Let's get out of here," Jack said. They locked the manor and drove away, leaving the horrors of Ravenwood Manor behind. Back in their hometown, life slowly returned to normal. But Emily couldn't forget what happened. One night, she found the old amulet on her bedside table, even though she had left it at the manor. Her heart raced as she picked it up. The room grew cold, and she heard a familiar whisper. "Welcome back," a voice said behind her. Emily spun around to see the dark figure from the manor, its eyes glowing with malevolence. "You can never escape Ravenwood Manor," it said, reaching out for her. Emily screamed as the room plunged into darkness. On a chilly autumn evening, 4 college friends, Megan, Brian, Laura, and Kevin, stand before the old decrepit house at the edge of town. The house, abandoned for years, is known for its dark past. Kevin challenges the group to spend the night inside. With nervous laughter and a sense of adventure, they agree and push open the creaky gate. The front door groans as it swings open, revealing a dark, musty interior. Dust motes dance in the beams of their flashlights. The smell of mold and decay fills the air. They step inside, the floorboards creaking under their feet, and the door slams shut behind them with a deafening bang. They make their way to the living room, where an old grand piano stands covered in dust. The wallpaper is peeling, and the room is filled with antique furniture draped in white sheets. Brian lifts a sheet to reveal a mirror, and they see a fleeting reflection of a shadowy figure behind them. A cold breeze brushes past them, and they hear a whispering sound, faint but unmistakable. Laura shivers and clutches Brian's arm. They decide to explore further, moving cautiously towards the source of the whispering. In the kitchen, they find old, rusted appliances and broken dishes scattered on the floor. The whispering grows louder, and they see a ghostly figure of a woman in tattered clothes standing by the stove. She disappears as quickly as she appeared, leaving them shaken. They discover a door leading to the basement. Kevin suggests going down, but Megan hesitates. The others convince her, and they descend the creaky stairs, their flashlights barely cutting through the darkness. The air grows colder, and an oppressive feeling surrounds them. In the basement, they find an old wooden table with strange symbols carved into it. A low growling noise fills the room, and they see glowing eyes staring at them from the shadows. Panic sets in, and they scramble back up the stairs, the door slamming shut behind them. Breathless and terrified, they race towards the front door. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and ghostly wails echoing through the halls. They struggle to open the front door, finally bursting out into the cool night air. The house falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse onto the grass, catching their breath. The house looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the memories of what they saw and heard. The night air is cold, but they feel a sense of relief and safety. Back in their dorms, the friends try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the ghostly woman and the glowing eyes in the basement. The whispers still echo in their minds, reminding them that some horrors can never be forgotten.
Emma, a writer in her early 30s, moves into an old Victorian house in Willow Creek. She hopes the secluded house will help her overcome her writer's block. As she steps into the house, the air feels heavy, and she hears faint whispers echoing through the empty rooms. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house creaks and groans as if it's alive. She hears footsteps in the hallway, but when she checks, there's no one there. Her unease grows, but she convinces herself it's just the house settling. While exploring the attic, Emma finds an old diary belonging to a girl named Lily. The diary speaks of strange occurrences and a tragic story of how Lily disappeared without a trace. Emma feels a chill run down her spine as she reads the last unfinished entry. The following night, the whispers return, clearer and more urgent. Shadows flicker and move on their own. Emma sees a ghostly figure of a young girl in the hallway, who vanishes as soon as she approaches. Fear takes hold of her. Terrified, Emma reaches out to the town's historian, Mr. Thompson. He tells her about the legend of Lily, a girl who disappeared many years ago. The house has a history of hauntings, and no one has lived there for long. Emma realizes she must uncover the truth to find peace. Determined, Emma performs a seance to communicate with Lily's spirit. As she calls out, the room grows cold, and the ghostly figure of Lily appears. Lily reveals she was murdered, and begs for Emma's help to find her remains and put her to rest. Following Lily's clues, Emma discovers a hidden cellar beneath the house. There she finds Lily's remains and a locket with her name. Emma feels a mix of horror and relief, knowing she can finally help Lily find peace. Emma arranges a proper burial for Lily. As she places the locket in Lily's grave, a sense of calm envelops the area. The whispers cease and the house feels lighter. Emma feels a deep sense of closure and knows she has done the right thing. With the haunting over, Emma finishes her novel, inspired by Lily's story. The house no longer feels oppressive. Instead, it's filled with a comforting, serene atmosphere. Emma sits by the window looking out at the sunny landscape, ready to start a new chapter in her life. Julia and her husband, Mark, move into an old Victorian house in a small town. The house is beautiful, but has been vacant for years. As they unpack, Julia finds an old dusty mirror in the attic. She decides to clean it and hang it in their bedroom. That night, Julia wakes up to strange sounds, whispering and soft footsteps. She dismisses it as the house settling. However, when she looks into the mirror, she briefly sees a shadowy figure behind her before it vanishes. Disturbed by the experience, Julia visits the local library to research the house's history. She learns that a woman named Elizabeth lived there a century ago and mysteriously disappeared. Locals believe her spirit haunts the house. Julia becomes convinced that the mirror is connected to Elizabeth. That night, she sees Elizabeth's ghost in the mirror again. This time, the ghost seems to be trying to communicate, mouthing the words, "Help me." Julia tells Mark about her experiences. Skeptical but wanting to support her, Mark suggests they consult a paranormal expert. The expert tells them that Elizabeth's spirit is trapped and needs help to find peace. The expert instructs them to perform a ritual to release Elizabeth's spirit. They set up candles and the mirror in the living room. Julia reads a passage provided by the expert. The room grows cold, and Elizabeth's spirit appears. Elizabeth's spirit reveals that she was murdered by her jealous husband and her body hidden in the basement. Julia and Mark are horrified but determined to give Elizabeth justice. They find her remains in the basement, just as she described. They call the police, who properly lay Elizabeth's remains to rest. Afterward, the house feels lighter and the strange occurrences stop. Julia looks at the mirror one last time and sees Elizabeth smiling peacefully before fading away. Months later, Julia and Mark have settled into their now peaceful home. They keep the mirror as a reminder of Elizabeth and the mystery they solved together. Life returns to normal, but they never forget the ghostly presence that once haunted their home.
Ravenwood Manor, a looming Gothic structure, dominates the landscape with its ominous presence. The setting sun bathes its darkened facade in a blood-red glow, as if warning all who dare approach of the secrets it holds within. The entrance to Ravenwood Manor is marked by ornate iron gates, their twisted designs speaking of a forgotten era. Vines snake their way around the cold metal, as if nature itself is reclaiming the estate from the hands of man. Within the sprawling grounds of Ravenwood Manor, darkness reigns supreme. Overgrown hedges and wilted flowers lend an air of neglect to the once grand estate. Moonlight struggles to penetrate the thick canopy of trees, casting eerie shadows upon the unkempt landscape. In the backyard of Ravenwood Manor, twisted paths wind their way through a maze of gnarled trees. At the center stands an ancient well, its stone walls covered in moss and mystery, beckoning those brave enough to uncover its secrets. Adjacent to Ravenwood Manor lies an overgrown cemetery, its weathered tombstones peeking through the tangled undergrowth like silent sentinels of the past. Wisps of fog cling to the ground, adding to the eerie atmosphere of the forgotten burial ground. Within the entrance hall of Ravenwood Manor, flickering candlelight casts long shadows upon the grand staircase. Tattered portraits line the walls, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow every move of those who dare to enter. In the dining room of Ravenwood Manor, a long table is set for an abandoned feast, its once luxurious settings now covered in dust and cobwebs. The chandelier above hangs low, its light obscured by the thick layer of neglect that pervades the room. Within the library of Ravenwood Manor, dusty shelves stretch as far as the eye can see, laden with forgotten tomes and ancient manuscripts. Moonlight filters through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns upon the worn carpet that bears the weight of centuries of knowledge. In the bedroom of Ravenwood Manor, the once grand canopy bed now sags under the weight of time, its tattered curtains billowing in the wind like ghosts of the past. Moonlight filters through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows upon the peeling wallpaper, as if the very walls themselves are haunted by the memories of those who once slept within. As dawn breaks, the front steps of Ravenwood Manor are bathed in the soft light of. On a crisp autumn day, a group of friends arrives at a remote cabin nestled deep within the Whispering Woods. The leaves crunch beneath their feet as they unload their belongings from the car, eager for a weekend of hiking and relaxation. But as they glance into the dense forest surrounding the cabin, a sense of unease washes over them, as if the trees themselves are whispering secrets they dare not share. The friends set out on a hike through the Whispering Woods, following a narrow trail that winds through the dense foliage. The air is cool and fragrant, and the only sound is the gentle rustle of leaves overhead. But as they venture deeper into the forest, the whispers grow louder, like a chorus of voices urging them to turn back. As they hike, the friends stumble upon an abandoned cabin hidden deep in the woods. The windows are shattered, and the door hangs off its hinges. Intrigued, they decide to investigate, their curiosity outweighing their sense of caution. But as they step inside, they're greeted by an eerie silence that hangs heavy in the air. Inside the cabin, the friends find strange symbols scrawled on the walls and mysterious artifacts scattered about. A sense of unease washes over them as they realize they've stumbled upon something dark and sinister. They exchange nervous whispers, their voices echoing in the empty space. As night falls, the friends gather around a campfire outside the cabin, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. But as they talk and laugh, they become aware of a strange sound, a soft whispering that seems to emanate from the very air around them. Their laughter fades, replaced by a growing sense of unease. That night, the friends are plagued by haunting dreams, visions of shadowy figures lurking in the darkness, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. They toss and turn in their sleep, unable to escape the grip of fear that holds them tight. When they wake, they find themselves drenched in sweat, their hearts pounding in their chests. As the whispers grow louder and more insistent, the friends begin to unravel, their minds tormented by the malevolent voices that seem to follow them wherever they go. They argue and accuse one another, their once strong bonds fraying under the weight of paranoia and fear. But as they spiral further into madness, they realize they must confront the darkness that lurks within the Whispering Woods if they have any hope of escaping its grasp. Armed with determination, the friends set out into the forest, their hearts pounding in their chests as they confront the source of the whispers that have tormented them for so long. With each step, the voices grow louder, until they're surrounded by a cacophony of sound that threatens to drive them mad. But as they reach the heart of the woods, they discover the truth. The whispers are not coming from some malevolent force, but from the very trees themselves, their branches swaying in the breeze like fingers beckoning them closer. With a newfound sense of understanding, the friends make their way out of the forest, their minds clearer than they've been in days. As they emerge into the light of day, they feel a weight lifted from their shoulders, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the Whispering Woods will always hold a certain mystique, they know they'll never again be haunted by the whispers that once tormented them. Grimsby Manor had a dark history that intrigued many, but only a few dared to explore its secrets. On a foggy autumn evening, Sarah, a young journalist with a passion for the paranormal, arrived at the mansion. She parked her car at the rusty gates, feeling a chill run down her spine. The mansion stood ominously in the distance, its windows like dark, watchful eyes. Sarah pushed open the creaking door of Grimsby Manor. Inside, the air was cold and musty. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but decaying foyer. Dust and cobwebs covered every surface, and old furniture lay shrouded in white sheets. Her footsteps echoed through the vast, empty space as she ventured further inside. As Sarah explored the mansion, she felt a sudden chill. Turning around, she saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. The figure disappeared as quickly as it appeared, leaving her heart pounding. Determined to uncover more, she made her way to the library, hoping to find records of the mansion's dark past. In the library, Sarah found rows of dusty old books. As she searched through them, she heard faint whispers and the sound of pages turning on their own. She discovered an old diary belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lord Grimsby. The entry spoke of dark rituals and a curse that had been placed on the house and its inhabitants. Sarah's exploration led her to a room filled with mirrors. As she walked through, her reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following her with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular caught her attention. In it, she saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. Sarah reached out to touch the mirror, but the image vanished. Sarah discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. She descended the creaky stairs into a dark, musty basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old, dusty books scattered on a table. She found a journal detailing the dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by Lord Grimsby. As Sarah read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lord Grimsby appeared, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Sarah and screamed, "You should not have come here." The walls shook and the air filled with a chilling wind. Sarah knew she had to leave immediately. Sarah bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind her. She raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on her. She burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but she could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on her. Back in her apartment, Sarah reviewed the photos and notes she had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the dark history of Grimsby Manor. As she finished, she felt a cold draft and heard Lord Grimsby's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." Sarah knew the haunting was far from over.
In a small town, Mia and Alex stumble upon an old mansion hidden behind overgrown bushes. Intrigued, they approach cautiously. The mansion looms tall, its windows boarded up and its facade crumbling. Mia feels a chill run down her spine as they step closer. Ignoring the warnings to stay away, Mia and Alex venture inside the mansion. The air is thick with dust and decay as they explore the dimly lit corridors. Strange whispers echo through the halls, sending shivers down their spines. They press on, drawn deeper into the mansion's mysteries. As they explore further, Mia and Alex come across old portraits lining the walls. The faces in the paintings seem to follow their every move, their eyes filled with an eerie intensity. Mia feels a sense of unease wash over her as she gazes into the eyes of the long-dead residents. As night falls, Mia and Alex hear strange noises echoing through the mansion. Soft whispers and the sound of footsteps on the creaky floorboards. A sense of dread washes over them as they realize they're not alone. They huddle together, their hearts pounding with fear. Suddenly, a ghostly figure materializes before Mia and Alex, a woman dressed in tattered clothing, her eyes hollow and empty. She reaches out to them, her voice a hollow whisper as she begs for release from her eternal torment. Mia and Alex recoil in horror, realizing they've stumbled upon something far more sinister than they ever imagined. With the ghostly figure closing in, Mia and Alex flee through the mansion's darkened corridors, their footsteps echoing loudly in the silence. They know they must escape before it's too late, before the darkness claims them as it has claimed so many before. Their hearts race as they race towards the exit, praying for salvation. As Mia and Alex burst through the mansion's doors, they find themselves back in the overgrown garden. The mansion looms behind them, silent and foreboding. Though they've escaped with their lives, they know they'll never truly be free from the horrors they encountered within its walls. Mia and Alex emerge from the woods, their hearts still racing with the memory of their ordeal. They vow never to return to the forgotten mansion, knowing that its secrets are best left undisturbed. As they walk away, they cling to each other, grateful to have survived the night. Emma, a young writer in her late 20s, inherits Blackwood Manor from her estranged grandmother. The manor is located on the outskirts of a small town, surrounded by dense, dark woods. Emma decides to move in, hoping the isolation will inspire her writing. As she arrives, she feels an eerie chill. The mansion, with its tall spires and ivy-covered walls, seems to loom over her ominously. Despite her unease, Emma is determined to make this her new home. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house is filled with strange noises, the creaking of floorboards, the whisper of the wind through cracks in the windows, and distant, indistinct whispers. She hears what sounds like footsteps outside her bedroom door, but when she checks, no one is there. She returns to bed, her mind racing with unease and exhaustion. The next day, while exploring the house, Emma discovers a locked door in the attic. Curious, she searches the house and finds an old rusty key hidden in a drawer. She uses the key to unlock the door and finds a small room filled with old furniture, cobwebs, and a large ornate mirror covered with a cloth. Emma removes the cloth from the mirror and, to her shock, sees the reflection of a young girl standing behind her. When she turns around, no one is there. The mirror begins to show disturbing images of past events in the house, including a girl being trapped and crying for help. Emma feels a chill run down her spine. Determined to find out more, Emma searches the house and finds an old diary hidden behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The diary belonged to her grandmother and details a tragic story of a girl named Lily who lived in the house and mysteriously disappeared. Emma realizes the ghost she saw is Lily, trapped in the mirror. Emma decides to perform a seance to communicate with Lily's spirit. She sets up candles and chants words from the diary. The room grows cold, and Lily's ghost appears, revealing that she was trapped by a dark ritual performed by Emma's grandmother. Lily begs Emma to free her. Following Lily's instructions, Emma gathers the items needed to break the ritual: a locket, a piece of Lily's clothing, and a special incantation. As she performs the ritual, the house shakes violently, and a dark, malevolent spirit tries to stop her. Emma persists, chanting the incantation louder and louder. The dark spirit attacks, but Emma continues the ritual, calling out to Lily for strength. A bright light fills the room, and the dark spirit screams before dissipating into nothingness. Lily's spirit smiles gratefully at Emma before ascending into the light, finally freed. With the haunting over, the house feels lighter and more welcoming. Emma finishes her novel, inspired by Lily's story. She decides to keep Blackwood Manor and transform it into a place of peace and creativity. Sitting on the porch, she feels a deep connection to the house and its history, ready for a new beginning. Emily, Jake, and Sarah arrived at Blackwood Manor, an ancient, crumbling estate shrouded in mist. The manor had been abandoned for decades, and stories of its haunting were legendary. They were there to document the paranormal activity for their online show. "This place is seriously creepy," Sarah said, shivering as she stepped out of the car. "That's the point," Jake replied, setting up his camera. "The spookier, the better." Emily led the way up the overgrown path to the front door, her excitement mixed with unease. "Let's get inside and start setting up." Inside the manor, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. The grand hall was filled with old furniture, draped in white sheets. As they explored, they found evidence of the past: old portraits, tattered books, and broken artifacts. "Look at this," Sarah said, picking up an old locket. "It must have belonged to someone important." Jake filmed everything, capturing the unsettling atmosphere. "This is going to be great footage." Emily found an old diary on a dusty table. "This might tell us what happened here." Emily read aloud from the diary, which detailed the tragic story of the Blackwood family. They had practiced dark rituals, summoning spirits that ultimately led to their downfall. The diary ended abruptly, hinting at a terrible event. "This is so creepy," Sarah said, looking around nervously. "We need to document everything," Jake insisted. "This is gold." As Emily closed the diary, a sudden chill filled the room. The lights flickered, and they heard a distant whisper. "Did you hear that?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. A shadow moved across the hall, catching their attention. They followed it to a room at the end of the corridor. Inside, the temperature dropped dramatically, and they saw a figure standing by the window. "Who's there?" Jake called out, but there was no response. The figure turned slowly, revealing a face twisted with pain and anger. It lunged at them, and they ran, slamming the door behind them. "We need to get out of here," Sarah screamed. "Not yet," Emily said, her fear giving way to determination. "We have to finish what we started." Emily found instructions for a banishment ritual in the diary. They gathered candles, chalk, and other items needed for the ritual. The air was thick with tension as they worked quickly, knowing the spirit could return at any moment. "Are you sure this will work?" Jake asked, lighting the candles. "It has to," Emily replied, drawing a circle on the floor. "We don't have any other choice." Sarah stood guard, her eyes darting around the room. "Hurry up. I don't want to be here any longer than we have to." As they began the ritual, the spirit returned, more furious than before. It howled and thrashed against the invisible barrier created by the circle. Emily chanted the incantation from the diary, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Keep it away from us," Sarah yelled, clutching a candle. "We're almost there," Emily shouted back, her focus unwavering. The spirit's form began to waver and dissolve as the ritual reached its climax. With one final desperate scream, it vanished into thin air. The friends collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a peaceful silence. "We did it," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's get out of here," Sarah urged, her eyes still wide with fear. They gathered their things and left the manor, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. As they walked away from Blackwood Manor, they felt a sense of triumph and relief. "Let's never do this again," Jake said, managing a weak smile. As they walked away from the manor, the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the forest. The manor behind them was now just a distant memory, a place they would never forget but never return to. "Let's make a pact," Emily said, stopping to look at her friends. "We never speak of this again." "Agreed," Jake and Sarah said in unison. They walked on, the past behind them and the future ahead, grateful to have survived the haunting of Blackwood Manor. On a cold, moonlit night, four friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lisa, stood at the gate of Blackwood Manor. The mansion was notorious for being haunted. They decided to enter, driven by curiosity and a dare. They pushed open the creaky front door and stepped inside. The foyer was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. Old portraits stared at them from the walls. They moved into the living room, where a grand piano stood in one corner and a large, broken chandelier hung from the ceiling. Suddenly, the piano played a single, haunting note. Everyone froze in fear. Gathering their courage, they climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, with several closed doors. They heard faint, eerie whispers, but couldn't tell where they were coming from. They opened one of the doors and found an old nursery. Dusty toys were scattered around, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Panicked, they rushed downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even darker and colder. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, and old furniture was strewn around. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. Her hollow eyes stared at them as she whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Blackwood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed never to speak of it again. Sophie arrived at Briarwood Manor, a sprawling estate she inherited from her great-uncle. The mansion stood alone on a hill, surrounded by gnarled trees and thick fog. As she approached, the gate creaked open on its own, setting her nerves on edge. She hesitated but walked through, determined to uncover the secrets of her inheritance. Sophie stepped inside the manor, greeted by a grand but dusty foyer. The air was heavy with the scent of decay. As she moved further in, the front door slammed shut behind her with a loud bang. Startled, she spun around, but no one was there. The only light came from her flickering flashlight. In the living room, old furniture was covered in white sheets. An antique clock ticked loudly, breaking the silence. Sophie noticed a photograph on the mantelpiece, showing her great-uncle with an unknown woman. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned quickly, but the room was empty. Sophie walked down a hallway lined with portraits of her ancestors. Their eyes seemed to follow her every move. She felt a chill as she passed by a particularly stern-looking man. As she continued, she heard a whisper, almost as if someone was calling her name. She froze, heart pounding. In the library, Sophie found shelves filled with dusty old books. One book in particular caught her eye, an old journal. As she read through it, she discovered it belonged to her great-uncle, detailing strange events and encounters with a dark presence. The room grew colder, and she felt like she was being watched. Behind a bookshelf, Sophie discovered a hidden door. She hesitated but felt compelled to open it. The door revealed a dark, narrow staircase leading down. Holding her flashlight, she descended, each step echoing in the silence. The air grew damp and cold. The basement was filled with old furniture and strange symbols painted on the walls. In the center stood an altar with black candles and an old book. As Sophie approached, the candles flickered to life, casting an eerie glow. She felt an overwhelming sense of dread as she heard distant whispers. Sophie's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She spun around to see a ghostly figure of the unknown woman from the photograph, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Help me," the figure whispered. Terrified, Sophie ran up the stairs, the house seeming to come alive with shadows moving and doors slamming. She burst through the front door into the foggy night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop running until she reached her car. She looked back once more, vowing never to return. Breathing heavily, Sophie glanced back at the manor as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure of the unknown woman watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, never looking back. Emma, a young writer in her late 20s, inherits an old mansion called Everwood Manor from her estranged aunt. Hoping to find inspiration for her next novel, she moves into the house. As she steps inside, she feels an unsettling chill. The house, surrounded by tall, dark trees, looks like it hasn't been lived in for years. Dust covers the furniture, and the air is thick with the scent of old wood and mildew. She feels a strange sense of foreboding, but brushes it off as nerves. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house is filled with strange noises, the creaking of floorboards, the whisper of the wind through cracks in the windows, and distant, indistinct whispers. She hears what sounds like footsteps outside her bedroom door, but when she checks, no one is there. She returns to bed, uneasy and sleep-deprived. The next day, while exploring the house, Emma discovers a locked door in the basement. Curious, she searches the house and finds an old rusty key hidden in a drawer. She uses the key to unlock the door and finds a small room filled with old furniture, cobwebs, and a large, ornate mirror covered with a cloth. Emma removes the cloth from the mirror and, to her shock, sees the reflection of a young girl standing behind her. When she turns around, no one is there. The mirror begins to show disturbing images of past events in the house, including a girl being trapped and crying for help. Emma feels a chill run down her spine. Determined to find out more, Emma searches the house and finds an old diary hidden behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The diary belonged to her aunt and details a tragic story of a girl named Lily who lived in the house and mysteriously disappeared. Emma realizes the ghost she saw is Lily, trapped in the mirror. Emma decides to perform a seance to communicate with Lily's spirit. She sets up candles and chants words from the diary. The room grows cold, and Lily's ghost appears, revealing that she was trapped by a dark ritual performed by Emma's aunt. Lily begs Emma to free her. Following Lily's instructions, Emma gathers the items needed to break the ritual: a locket, a piece of Lily's clothing, and a special incantation. As she performs the ritual, the house shakes violently, and a dark, malevolent spirit tries to stop her. Emma persists, chanting the incantation louder and louder. The dark spirit attacks, but Emma continues the ritual, calling out to Lily for strength. A bright light fills the room, and the dark spirit screams before dissipating into nothingness. Lily's spirit smiles gratefully at Emma before ascending into the light, finally freed. With the haunting over, the house feels lighter and more welcoming. Emma finishes her novel, inspired by Lily's story. She decides to keep Everwood Manor and transform it into a place of peace and creativity. Sitting on the porch, she feels a deep connection to the house and its history, ready for a new beginning.
It was a cold, rainy evening when Emily received a letter from a law firm she had never heard of. Her great-uncle, a man she had never met, had passed away and left her his mansion, Blackwood Manor. Intrigued by the unexpected inheritance, Emily decided to visit the old house with her friends, Mark, Sophie, and Daniel. "I can't believe this place is mine," Emily said as they drove up the winding road to the mansion. Blackwood Manor loomed ahead, a Gothic structure with ivy-covered walls and dark, empty windows that seemed to watch their every move. "Looks like something out of a horror movie," Daniel joked, though his eyes reflected a hint of fear. Inside, the mansion was even more imposing. High ceilings, dusty furniture, and cobwebs in every corner gave it an eerie atmosphere. They split up to explore, each drawn to different parts of the house. "Look at this place," Sophie said, her voice echoing in the grand foyer. "It's like stepping back in time." Emily found herself in the library, where she discovered old family portraits in a large leather-bound book on a pedestal. As she opened it, a chill ran down her spine. The book contained detailed accounts of strange rituals and ghostly sightings. "This is weird," she murmured, feeling an inexplicable sense of dread. That night, the friends settled into their rooms. The wind howled outside, and the mansion creaked with every gust. Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As she tried to sleep, she heard whispers and footsteps in the hallway. "Who's there?" she called out, but received no answer. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the foot of her bed. Emily screamed, waking everyone up. When they rushed into her room, the figure was gone. "It was right there," Emily insisted, trembling. "It was just a bad dream," Mark said, trying to comfort her, but his voice lacked conviction. The next day, they decided to explore the basement, hoping to uncover the source of the strange occurrences. The basement was dark and musty, filled with old furniture and boxes. In the far corner, they found a hidden door. "This place just gets creepier," Daniel said as they pried the door open. Inside was a small room filled with bizarre artifacts, jars with strange contents, ancient symbols carved into the walls, and a large, dusty mirror. "What the hell is all this?" Sophie asked, her voice shaking. "It looks like some kind of ritual room," Emily said, her unease growing. Emily felt drawn to the mirror. As she wiped away the dust, she saw not just her reflection, but another face behind her. An old woman with hollow eyes and a sinister smile. "Emily, step away from the mirror," Mark said, pulling her back. The reflection changed, showing horrific scenes of past inhabitants suffering. The room grew colder and the sense of dread intensified. "We need to get out of here," Daniel said urgently. But the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. The symbols on the walls began to glow, and the ghostly face in the mirror started to chant. Trapped in the basement, the friends tried to find a way out. The ghostly presence grew stronger, manifesting in front of them. The old woman from the mirror appeared, her eyes filled with malice. "You shouldn't have come here," she hissed. "This house is cursed." Objects began to fly around the room, and the friends huddled together, trying to protect themselves. Emily remembered the book she found in the library. "We need to perform a ritual to banish her," she shouted over the chaos. Emily and the others rushed back to the library to retrieve the book. As they read through the incantations, the mansion seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and windows shattering. "Hurry, Emily," Sophie urged. Emily recited the ritual, and the ghostly figure screamed in rage. The house shook violently, and the friends struggled to keep their balance. "By the power of light, we banish you," Emily shouted. A blinding light filled the room, and the ghost's scream reached a deafening pitch before she vanished, leaving the house silent once more. The mansion was eerily quiet after the ghost was banished. The friends cautiously explored, ensuring the spirit was truly gone. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, and the house seemed almost peaceful. "We did it," Daniel said, relieved. "But what now?" Sophie asked. "This place still feels wrong." "We should leave," Emily decided. "This house needs to be left alone." They packed their things and left Blackwood Manor, vowing to never return. As they drove away, Emily glanced back one last time. The mansion stood silently, its dark history buried once more. Back in their town, life slowly returned to normal. The friends tried to move on, but the memories of Blackwood Manor lingered. Emily kept the book hidden away, a reminder of the horrors they faced. One night, Emily heard a familiar whispering. She turned to see the old woman from the mirror standing at the foot of her bed. "Did you really think it was over?" the ghost whispered, her voice dripping with malice. Emily screamed, and the room went dark. The nightmare was far from over.
Jonathan, a middle-aged man with a strained relationship with his family, receives a letter informing him of an inheritance from his late uncle. The inheritance includes a remote mansion in the countryside. Curious and financially strained, Jonathan decides to visit the mansion with his wife, Laura, and their teenage daughter, Megan. Laura looks worried. "Are you sure about this? We don't even know much about your uncle." Jonathan nods. "We need a fresh start, and maybe this place can offer that." Megan, always the adventurous one, says excitedly, "It'll be like an adventure." The family arrives at the mansion late in the afternoon. The mansion stands tall and imposing, surrounded by a dense forest. The air is thick with the scent of decay, and the atmosphere is eerily quiet. Megan shivers. This place feels off. Jonathan, trying to be positive, says, "It's just old. Let's see what's inside." Laura clutches Megan's hand. "Stay close, honey." Inside, the mansion is filled with dust and cobwebs. The furniture is covered with white sheets, and the air is musty. As they explore, Megan finds an old, ornate mirror in one of the rooms. The mirror's surface is strangely clean compared to the rest of the house. "Look at this mirror," Megan calls out. Laura touches the frame. "It's beautiful, but out of place here." Jonathan frowns. "Why is it so clean?" That night, the family tries to settle in. Jonathan and Laura fall asleep quickly, but Megan struggles. Around midnight, she hears faint whispers and feels a cold breeze. The mirror in her room begins to fog up, revealing words written from the inside. "Help us," it reads. Terrified, Megan runs to her parents' room. "Mom, Dad, there's something in the mirror." Jonathan, groggy, tries to comfort her. "It's just your imagination, Megan. Go back to sleep." The next day, the family visits the local library to learn more about the mansion. They discover that it was owned by Jonathan's uncle, who was a reclusive and eccentric man interested in the occult. Laura reads from an old newspaper. Local recluse found dead under mysterious circumstances. Mansion believed to be haunted. Jonathan sighs. "This explains a lot. We need to be careful." Megan, still shaken, adds, "What if the spirits are still here?" Back at the mansion, Jonathan discovers a hidden door in the basement. Inside, they find an old study filled with books on the occult, strange artifacts, and a large, locked chest. Laura examines a book. "He was really into dark stuff. This can't be good." Jonathan tries to open the chest, but fails. "We need to find the key. There might be answers inside." Megan points to a strange symbol on the wall. "I've seen this symbol before, in my room." That night, the hauntings escalate. Objects move on their own, and ghostly apparitions appear. Megan is dragged out of bed by an unseen force, and Laura sees a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway watching them. "We have to leave now," Laura screams, but the doors are locked and won't open. Jonathan grabs an old book from the study. "This book has instructions to banish the spirits. We need to perform the ritual." Desperate, the family gathers in the basement to perform the ritual. They light candles and arrange the symbols in a circle. Jonathan reads the incantation aloud, while Laura and Megan hold hands, trembling. As the ritual progresses, the house shakes, and the spirits grow more agitated. A blinding light fills the room, and the spirits are drawn into the circle, screaming. "Keep going, Jonathan!" Laura yells over the noise. With a final shout, Jonathan completes the incantation and the spirits vanish. The house falls silent. The next morning, the mansion feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone, and sunlight streams through the windows. The family packs up their belongings, relieved that the ordeal is over. "We should tell someone about this place," Laura says, looking back at the mansion. Jonathan nods. "Let's make sure no one else has to go through this." They drive away, leaving the mansion behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Megan finds the old mirror in her room, even though they left it at the mansion. Her heart races as she sees words slowly appear on the surface. "We are not done," it reads. Megan turns to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness.
The whispering woods loomed ominously under the fading light of dusk. Trees stood tall and twisted, their branches reaching out like clawed hands. A thick mist settled among the trees, obscuring the path ahead and adding to the sense of foreboding. Deep within the woods, an abandoned cabin stood desolate. Its windows were boarded up, and its door hung off its hinges. Weathered wood and creeping vines adorned the exterior. Inside, darkness and mustiness filled the air, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling like ghostly veils. The living room of the cabin was sparse, with a dilapidated sofa and a dusty rug covering the floor. A broken window let in a chilling breeze, causing the faded photographs on the walls to flutter ominously. The kitchen was in disarray, with broken cabinets and scattered utensils. The sink was stained, and a thick layer of grime covered the countertops. A single flickering bulb cast long, eerie shadows that danced across the walls. The backyard of the cabin was overgrown with weeds, and old rusted gardening tools lay abandoned among the tangled foliage. A gnarled tree stood in the center, its branches reaching out like skeletal fingers against the moonlit sky, adding to the eerie atmosphere. The whispering woods at midnight were cloaked in darkness. The trees seemed to sway and whisper secrets to each other, their branches creaking in the stillness of the night. Strange, ghostly lights flickered among the shadows, adding to the sense of otherworldly dread. The bedroom was cold and drafty, with a creaky bed covered in moth-eaten sheets. Moonlight filtered through the cracks in the boarded-up window, casting eerie patterns on the floor and illuminating the room in a ghostly glow. The attic was filled with dusty, forgotten belongings. Old trunks sat in the corners, their contents long forgotten. Cobwebs hung from the rafters, and the air was heavy with the scent of decay, as if the very walls were whispering tales of the past. As dawn broke, the whispering woods were bathed in the soft light of morning. The mist began to dissipate, revealing the twisted trees and tangled underbrush. Birds chirped in the distance, bringing a sense of calm to the once eerie forest, as if the night's terrors had never existed. Ravenswood House had a reputation for being the most haunted place in the small town of Millfield. On a misty autumn evening, Emma, a curious journalist, arrived to investigate the legends surrounding the mansion. She parked her car at the gate, shivering from the cold and the eerie atmosphere. The mansion loomed in the distance, its windows like dark, watchful eyes. Emma pushed open the creaky wooden door of Ravenswood House. Inside, the air was cold and stale. Dust covered every surface and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but decayed foyer. Her footsteps echoed as she ventured further inside, the silence pressing in on her. As Emma explored the mansion, she felt a sudden chill. Turning a corner, she saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving her heart pounding. Determined to uncover more, she made her way to the library, hoping to find records of the mansion's dark past. In the library, Emma found rows of dusty old books. As she searched through them, she heard whispers and the sound of pages turning by themselves. She discovered an old diary belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lady Ravenswood. The entry spoke of dark rituals and a curse that had been placed on the house and its inhabitants. Emma's exploration led her to a room filled with mirrors. As she walked through, her reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following her with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular caught her attention. In it, she saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. Emma reached out to touch the mirror, but the image vanished. Emma discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. She descended the creaky stairs into a dark, musty basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old dusty books scattered on a table. She found a journal detailing the dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by Lady Ravenswood. As Emma read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lady Ravenswood appeared, her face twisted with rage. She pointed at Emma and screamed, "You should not have come here." The walls shook, and the air filled with a chilling wind. Emma knew she had to leave immediately. Emma bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind her. She raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on her. She burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but she could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on her. Back in her apartment, Emma reviewed the photos and notes she had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the dark history of Ravenswood House. As she finished, she felt a cold draft and heard Lady Ravenswood's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." Emma knew the haunting was far from over.
In a secluded forest lies a small clearing, bathed in the soft light of the setting sun. 4 friends, Alex, Jess, Ryan, and Maya, set up camp for the night, their tents arranged in a circle around a crackling campfire. The woods around them are silent, save for the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. As night falls, a faint whisper drifts through the trees, barely audible over the crackling of the fire. The friends exchange uneasy glances, their senses on high alert. They dismiss it as the wind playing tricks on their ears and continue their conversation, but the whisper lingers in the back of their minds. As the night wears on, the friends notice that their supplies, flashlights, food, and water, begin to disappear one by one. They search frantically, their panic mounting with each missing item. Jess suggests that they may have misplaced them, but Alex's flashlight vanishes from his hand mid-sentence, leaving them in darkness. Suddenly, a pair of glowing eyes appear in the darkness just beyond the edge of the clearing. The friends freeze, their breath catching in their throats as they watch the eyes move closer, their glow growing brighter with each step. They realize too late that they are not alone in the woods. With adrenaline fueling their movements, the friends leap to their feet and flee into the woods, their hearts pounding with fear. Branches claw at their clothes and roots trip them up as they run blindly through the darkness. Behind them, the unseen presence gives chase, its footsteps echoing through the night. Exhausted and terrified, the friends stumble into a small clearing, their backs pressed against a towering rock formation. With nowhere left to run, they turn to face their pursuer, their hearts pounding in their chests. The glowing eyes emerge from the darkness, revealing a creature of nightmare, a spectral being with twisted features and malevolent intent. Emma, a young writer in her late 20s, inherits an old mansion called Ravenwood Manor from her estranged uncle. She decides to visit the house, hoping it will be a quiet place to write her novel. As she arrives, she feels an unsettling chill in the air. The house, surrounded by dark woods, looks like it hasn't been touched in years. Vines creep up the stone walls, and the windows are dark and foreboding. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house creaks and groans as if it's alive. She hears footsteps in the hallway and the faint sound of whispers. When she investigates, she finds nothing but darkness and silence. She returns to bed, feeling uneasy. The next day, while exploring the house, Emma discovers a locked door in the basement. Curious, she searches the house and finds an old, rusty key hidden in a drawer. She uses the key to unlock the door and finds a small room filled with old furniture, cobwebs, and a large, ornate mirror covered with a cloth. Emma removes the cloth from the mirror and, to her shock, sees the reflection of a young girl standing behind her. When she turns around, no one is there. The mirror begins to show disturbing images of past events in the house, including a girl being trapped and crying for help. Emma feels a chill run down her spine. Determined to find out more, Emma searches the house and finds an old diary hidden behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The diary belonged to her uncle and details a tragic story of a girl named Lily who lived in the house and mysteriously disappeared. Emma realizes the ghost she saw as Lily, trapped in the mirror. Emma decides to perform a seance to communicate with Lily's spirit. She sets up candles and chants words from the diary. The room grows cold and Lily's ghost appears, revealing that she was trapped by a dark ritual performed by Emma's uncle. Lily begs Emma to free her. Following Lily's instructions, Emma gathers the items needed to break the ritual: a locket, a piece of Lily's clothing, and a special incantation. As she performs the ritual, the house shakes violently, and a dark, malevolent spirit tries to stop her. Emma persists, chanting the incantation louder and louder. The dark spirit attacks, but Emma continues the ritual, calling out to Lily for strength. A bright light fills the room, and the dark spirit screams before dissipating into nothingness. Lily's spirit smiles gratefully at Emma before ascending into the light, finally freed. With the haunting over, the house feels lighter and more welcoming. Emma finishes her novel, inspired by Lily's story. She decides to keep Ravenwood Manor and transform it into a place of peace and creativity. Sitting on the porch, she feels a deep connection to the house and its history, ready for a new beginning.
At the end of a desolate road sits an abandoned house, its once grand facade now marred by neglect. Boarded-up windows and peeling paint tell the tale of years gone by, while dead trees loom overhead, casting ominous shadows upon the overgrown lawn. A narrow path winds its way through the dense forest, the branches overhead blocking out the moonlight and shrouding the surroundings in darkness. Roots protrude from the ground like gnarled fingers, creating trip hazards for any who dare to tread upon the shadowed path. In the heart of the forest lies a moonlit clearing, the soft light casting eerie shadows upon the ground. A sense of unease hangs heavy in the air, as if unseen eyes are watching from the darkness beyond. A derelict bridge spans a chasm, its rusted metal rails barely holding together against the ravages of time. The river below churns with a menacing intensity, its dark waters reflecting the moon's ghostly glow like a mirror into the abyss. Deep within the forest lies a forgotten cemetery, its tombstones weathered and worn with age. Wisps of mist cling to the ground, shrouding the graves in an otherworldly haze that seems to whisper secrets of the past. At the edge of the clearing stands an ancient well, its stone walls covered in moss and ivy that seem to writhe and twist in the moonlight. The darkness within seems to swallow all light, drawing the eye into its mysterious depths with an irresistible pull. Twisted trees loom overhead, their gnarled branches reaching out like grasping hands eager to ensnare the unwary. Shadows dance among the tangled foliage, casting strange shapes upon the forest floor and adding to the sense of foreboding that permeates the air. Sinister shadows stretch across the forest floor, their shifting forms creating an eerie tableau that seems to come alive in the darkness. The air is thick with the sound of whispered secrets, as if the very darkness itself is alive with malevolent intent. Deep within the forest lies a haunted glade, its twisted beauty a stark contrast to the surrounding darkness. Strange symbols adorn the trees, their meaning lost to time and their presence adding to the sense of unease that permeates the air. As the first light of dawn breaks through the darkness, the forest is bathed in a warm glow that banishes the shadows and brings hope to the land. Birds sing in the trees, their joyful chorus heralding the arrival of a new day and chasing away the lingering echoes of the night.
Emma arrived at Hollow Hill, an old mansion inherited from a distant relative she never knew. Surrounded by a dense forest, the mansion looked abandoned and sinister. The sky was overcast, and a sense of unease washed over her as she approached the entrance. Emma pushed open the heavy wooden door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and musty. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs hung in the corners. An eerie silence filled the air, broken only by the distant sound of creaking floorboards. Emma stepped into the living room, where old furniture lay shrouded in white sheets. An old fireplace dominated one wall, with a large mirror above it. She saw a faint movement in the mirror, but when she turned around, the room was empty. The only sound was the faint ticking of an old clock. In the hallway, Emma found portraits of her ancestors. The eyes of the painted figures seemed to follow her. She felt a chill as she passed by a particularly stern-looking man. Suddenly, she heard a whisper, but when she turned around, no one was there. Emma discovered the mansion's library, filled with ancient books and old furniture. She found an old leather-bound journal on a desk. As she opened it, she read about dark rituals and mysterious deaths that plagued her family. The air grew colder, and she felt an unseen presence watching her. Emma noticed a hidden door behind a bookshelf. She hesitated, but pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down. The air was damp and cold. Holding her flashlight, she descended the stairs, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the silence. The basement was cold and damp, with strange symbols painted on the walls. An altar stood in the center, surrounded by melted candles and old, tattered books. As Emma approached the altar, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The symbols seemed to glow faintly, and she heard distant, echoing whispers. Emma's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand brush against her arm. Panic set in as she fumbled to turn the flashlight back on. When it flickered back on, she saw a ghostly figure standing by the altar, staring at her with hollow eyes. Desperate to escape, Emma turned and ran up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and shadows moving around her. She reached the front door, threw it open, and ran into the stormy night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop until she reached her car. Breathing heavily, Emma glanced back at the mansion as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, vowing never to return.
Willow House, an old decrepit mansion, stands alone in the middle of an overgrown yard. Its windows are shattered, and ivy climbs up the stone walls. As the sun sets, the house is bathed in a gloomy light, casting long shadows that hint at the mansion's dark past. Inside Willow House, the foyer is filled with dust and cobwebs. An old chandelier hangs from the ceiling, its crystals dulled by grime. A grand staircase leads up to darkness, and broken furniture lies scattered, remnants of a time long forgotten. The living room is a snapshot of a bygone era, with a dusty sofa and a cold, empty fireplace. Portraits of stern-looking ancestors line the walls, their eyes seeming to follow every movement. The air is thick with the scent of neglect and faded grandeur. In the dining room, a long table is draped with a dusty, tattered tablecloth. Cobwebs hang from a once elegant chandelier, and old rusty cutlery is scattered about. The broken windows let in the cold night air, amplifying the room's eerie stillness. The kitchen is in disarray with broken cabinets and old pots and pans scattered around. The walls are stained and the floor is covered in debris. An old rusted knife lies on the counter, a silent witness to the passage of time. The grand staircase is enveloped in darkness. The wooden steps creak with every movement, and the banister is thick with dust. Faint, eerie whispers echo through the air, sending shivers down the spine. In the bedroom, a canopy bed stands covered in dust and cobwebs. Moonlight filters through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows on the peeling wallpaper. An old wardrobe in the corner has its doors slightly ajar, adding to the room's unsettling atmosphere. The attic is cluttered with old, forgotten items covered in sheets and dust. A single dim light bulb hangs from the ceiling, casting long shadows that dance eerily. The air is thick and musty, filled with the scent of decay and lost memories. A hidden door in the attic reveals a secret room. Inside, the space is filled with old books and strange artifacts. A large, dust-covered mirror dominates one wall, reflecting an eerie, distorted image. The atmosphere is heavy with an unseen presence, making the air feel thick and oppressive. As dawn breaks, Willow House is bathed in the soft light of the morning sun. The shadows recede, revealing the full extent of the mansion's decay. Birds begin to chirp, their cheerful notes bringing a sense of normalcy back to the eerie setting. The horrors of the night fade, but the memories linger, a haunting reminder of the echoes that inhabit Willow House. In the heart of a dense forest stood an old, forgotten asylum. It had been abandoned for decades, its history buried under layers of dust and overgrown vines. The locals believed it was cursed, and no one dared to go near it. However, a group of 4 friends, Jake, Lisa, Ben, and Sarah, decided to explore it after hearing the eerie tales. "Are we really doing this, Indato Selwyn?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Of course," Jake replied, leading the way. "It's just an old building." As they approached the asylum, the air grew colder, and an unsettling silence surrounded them. Inside, the asylum was even more ominous. The walls were lined with peeling paint, and the floor was covered in debris. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. "This place gives me the creeps," Ben said, his flashlight illuminating the dark corridors. "Just stick together," Jake said, trying to sound brave. "We'll be fine." As they moved deeper into the asylum, they heard faint whispers and distant footsteps, though they were the only ones there. Or so they thought. While exploring a particularly dark hallway, Lisa suddenly screamed. "Did you see that?" She pointed towards a shadowy figure that disappeared around the corner. "What did you see?" Jake asked, rushing to her side. "A person, or something that looked like one," Lisa replied, shaking. "Let's check it out," Ben suggested, though his voice was shaky. They cautiously followed, but the figure was gone. Instead, they found an old, rusted wheelchair with fresh scratch marks on the floor. In one of the rooms, they found old patient records and disturbing photos. The files detailed horrific experiments conducted on the patients. "This is sick," Sarah said, flipping through the documents. "No wonder this place is abandoned." Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them. The friends rushed to open it, but it was stuck. The room grew colder, and they heard a low, guttural growl. "We need to get out of here," Jake said, panic setting in. They managed to pry the door open and fled down the corridor. The whispers grew louder, and they could feel a presence following them. Sarah looked back and saw shadowy figures closing in. "Run!" she screamed. They raced through the maze-like hallways, trying to find an exit. The spirits of the asylum's past residents seemed to be everywhere, their wails echoing through the walls. "We're not alone," Ben panted, fear evident in his voice. The group stumbled upon a chapel within the asylum, its stained glass windows cracked but still intact. The room had an eerie calmness, and the spirits seemed to avoid it. "Maybe we can hide here," Lisa suggested, her voice trembling. They barricaded the doors and huddled together, trying to catch their breath. As they sat in the dim light of their flashlights, they noticed a hidden door behind the altar. "Should we check it out?" Jake asked. "We don't have a choice," Ben replied. They opened the hidden door and found a narrow staircase leading down to a secret basement. The air grew colder as they descended. The basement was filled with old medical equipment and cages. "This must be where they conducted their experiments," Sarah whispered. As they explored, they found a large, iron-bound book, filled with incantations and rituals. The book seemed to pulse with a dark energy. "We need to destroy this," Jake said. "It might be the source of the curse." With the book in hand, they returned to the chapel. They decided to perform a ritual to break the curse. As they began chanting from the book, the spirits became more aggressive, banging on the doors and windows. "Keep going," Alex shouted. The room shook, and the spirits' wails grew louder. Just as it seemed the spirits would break through, a blinding light filled the chapel, and the spirits screamed one final time before vanishing. "It's over," Emily whispered, dropping the book. The spirits gone, the friends made their way out of the asylum. The building seemed less menacing now, the air lighter. "We made it," Lisa said, relief evident in her voice. As they reached the forest edge, they turned back to see the asylum one last time. It stood silently, as if the horrors within had finally been laid to rest. "We should go," Ben said, "and never speak of this place again." Back in town, life slowly returned to normal. The friends promised each other to never speak of the asylum again. However, the memories of that night lingered. A few weeks later, Sarah received a package. Inside was another iron-bound book, similar to the one they had destroyed. Attached was a note, "For your collection." Her heart raced as she realized the curse might not be broken after all. On a stormy night, 4 friends, Emma, Jake, Sophie, and Liam, arrive at Ravenswood Manor, an abandoned house said to be haunted. The wind howls and lightning illuminates the decaying facade. Jake, the adventurous one, suggests they spend the night there. Despite their fear, they all agree and push open the rusted gate. The front door creaks loudly as they step inside. The foyer is dark and smells of mold. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and broken furniture lies scattered around. Their flashlights reveal faded portraits on the walls, eyes seemingly following them. The door slams shut behind them, making them jump. They enter the living room, where a grand piano sits covered in dust. The wallpaper is peeling, and the room is filled with antique furniture draped in white sheets. Emma notices a music box on the mantel. She opens it, and it starts playing a haunting melody. Suddenly, a cold breeze brushes past them, and the room feels alive. A shadow moves across the room, and Sophie screams. They shine their flashlights in the direction of the movement, but see nothing. Jake insists it was just a trick of the light, but the others aren't so sure. They decide to stick together as they continue exploring. In the kitchen, they find rusted appliances and broken dishes. The air is colder here, and the feeling of being watched intensifies. Liam opens a cupboard, and a pair of ghostly eyes stare back at him. He yells and slams the door shut, his heart racing. They find a door leading to the basement. Jake suggests they go down, but Emma hesitates. The others convince her, and they descend the creaky wooden stairs. The basement is pitch dark and damp. Their flashlights reveal old, dusty furniture and strange markings on the walls. In the basement, they find an old table with a Ouija board on it. Suddenly, the planchette moves on its own, spelling out, "Leave now." A low growl echoes through the room, and they see red eyes staring at them from the darkness. Panicked, they rush back up the stairs. They race towards the front door, but it won't budge. Ghostly wails echo through the house, and the walls seem to close in on them. Jake finds a side window and breaks it with a chair. One by one, they crawl through, escaping into the stormy night. The house falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse onto the wet grass, gasping for breath. The manor looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the night's events. The storm begins to calm, but the memory of what they saw remains vivid. Back at their homes, they try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the ghostly eyes and the whispers in the dark. The memories of that night stay with them, a reminder that some places are better left undisturbed.
Ravenwood Manor had always been shrouded in mystery and fear. On a cold, misty evening, Alex, a young journalist with a thirst for the unknown, arrived at the manor. The gates were rusty and covered in ivy, and as Alex pushed them open, they creaked ominously. The mansion loomed in the distance, its dark windows staring back like lifeless eyes. Alex pushed open the heavy wooden door, which groaned in protest. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. He turned on his flashlight, revealing a grand but dilapidated foyer. Dust-covered chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and old furniture lay draped in white sheets. His footsteps echoed in the vast, empty space as he ventured deeper inside. As Alex explored the mansion, he felt a sudden chill. Turning around, he saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving his heart racing. Determined to find answers, he made his way to the library, hoping to uncover the mansion's dark past. In the library, Alex found rows of dusty old books. As he searched through them, he heard faint whispers and the sound of pages turning on their own. He discovered an old journal belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lord Ravenwood. The entries spoke of dark rituals and a curse that had been placed on the house and its inhabitants. Alex's exploration led him to a room filled with mirrors. As he walked through, his reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following him with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular caught his attention. In it, he saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. Alex reached out to touch the mirror, but the image vanished. Alex discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. He descended the creaky stairs into a dark, musty basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old, dusty books scattered on a table. He found a journal detailing the dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by Lord Ravenwood. As Alex read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lord Ravenwood appeared, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Alex and screamed, "You should not have come here!" The walls shook, and the air filled with a chilling wind. Alex knew he had to leave immediately. Alex bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind him. He raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on him. He burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but he could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on him. Back in his apartment, Alex reviewed the photos and notes he had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. He wrote his article, revealing the dark history of Ravenwood Manor. As he finished, he felt a cold draft and heard Lord Ravenwood's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." Alex knew the haunting was far from over. It was a dreary afternoon when Sarah, Tom, and their teenage daughter Lily arrived at Eldridge Manor. The old, sprawling mansion stood ominously against the darkening sky, its windows like blank eyes staring back at them. The family had inherited the property from a distant relative, and despite its eerie appearance, they decided to give it a chance. "Wow, this place is huge!" Lily exclaimed, though her excitement was tempered by an uneasy feeling. Tom forced a smile. "Let's make it our home. It just needs a little work." Sarah glanced at the towering structure, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Let's get inside before it gets too dark." Inside, the manor was filled with antique furniture, dusty chandeliers, and creaking wooden floors. As they explored, they discovered a hidden staircase behind an old bookcase. Curiosity got the better of them, and they descended into a dimly lit basement. "This place is like a maze," Tom said, his voice echoing off the walls. Sarah found an old diary on a dusty table. "Look at this," she said, flipping through the pages. "It's from the 1800s. Lily, shining a flashlight around the room, gasped as she saw strange symbols carved into the walls. "What do these mean?" That night, as they settled into their new home, strange things began to happen. Lily's room was the coldest in the house, and she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Around midnight, she heard whispering voices and saw a shadow moving in the corner of her room. "Mom! Dad!" she screamed, running to their room. Tom and Sarah woke up startled. "What is it, Lily?" Tom asked. "There's something in my room. I heard voices and saw a shadow," Lily said, trembling. Sarah tried to comfort her. "It's just your imagination, honey. This place is old and creepy, but there's nothing to be afraid of." The next day, Sarah delved deeper into the old diary. It belonged to a woman named Eleanor Eldridge, who wrote about the strange occurrences in the manor and her experiments with the occult. She mentioned a mirror in the attic that was the source of the hauntings. "We need to find that mirror," Sarah said, showing the diary to Tom. Tom nodded. "Let's go to the attic." Together, they climbed the narrow staircase to the attic. Amidst the cobwebs and old trunks, they found the mirror, covered with a dusty cloth. "This must be it," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. As they uncovered the mirror, a cold breeze swept through the attic. The mirror's surface was strangely clear, and as they looked into it, they saw faint images of people moving behind them, ghostly figures trapped within the glass. Sarah gasped. "This is it. This is what's causing everything." Tom placed a hand on her shoulder. "We need to destroy it." But before they could act, the mirror began to glow, and the room filled with an unearthly light. The figures in the mirror became more distinct, reaching out towards them. "We need to get out of here," Tom shouted, pulling Sarah towards the stairs. That night, the hauntings intensified. Doors slammed shut on their own, footsteps echoed in empty hallways, and ghostly apparitions appeared throughout the house. The family realized they had to find a way to end the hauntings for good. "We need to perform a ritual," Sarah said, showing them a passage from the diary. "It's the only way to banish the spirits." Tom gathered the necessary items: candles, salt, and a ceremonial dagger. "Let's do this. We have no other choice." They set up the ritual in the basement, forming a circle with the salt and placing the mirror in the center. The family began the ritual, chanting the incantations from the diary. As they did, the temperature in the room dropped, and the ghostly figures from the mirror began to emerge, swirling around them. "Keep going," Sarah urged, her voice shaking. Tom held the dagger steady, ready for the final part of the ritual. "We're almost there." Lily, clutching her mother's hand, watched in terror as the spirits drew closer, their faces contorted with rage and sorrow. As Tom raised the dagger to complete the ritual, a powerful force knocked him to the ground. The mirror glowed brighter, and a deafening roar filled the room. "No, we can't stop now!" Sarah shouted, helping Tom up. With renewed determination, Tom plunged the dagger into the mirror. The glass shattered, releasing a blinding light and a wave of cold air that knocked them all back. The spirits screamed and dissipated, leaving the room in silence. The temperature began to rise, and the oppressive feeling lifted. "It's over," Tom said, breathing heavily. The next morning, the manor felt different. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the oppressive atmosphere was gone. The family began packing their things, eager to leave the haunted house behind. "We did it," Lily said, smiling for the first time in days. Sarah nodded. "Let's never speak of this place again." Tom agreed. "We need to move on with our lives." As they drove away from Eldridge Manor, the weight of the past days lifted, and they felt hopeful for the future. Back home, life seemed to return to normal. However, one night, Sarah found a piece of the shattered mirror in her bag. She stared at it, her heart pounding. Suddenly, she heard a familiar whisper and saw a shadow move across the room. "Tom, it's not over," she whispered, feeling a chill run down her spine. As the shadow loomed larger, the whisper grew louder, and Sarah realized with horror that the spirits had followed them home.
In a remote corner of the countryside lies an abandoned mansion, its once grand facade now crumbling with neglect. 4 adventurous friends, Emma, Jack, Lily, and Max, embark on a dare to spend the night inside. As they approach, the moon casts eerie shadows on the broken windows. With trepidation, they push open the rusty gates and step into the mansion's courtyard. The air is heavy with the scent of decay, and the sound of their footsteps echoes off the crumbling walls. As they enter the main entrance, a chill runs down their spines. Inside, they find themselves in a maze of decrepit hallways and abandoned rooms. Dust hangs in the air, and the silence is suffocating. Strange symbols are etched into the walls, and the floorboards creak ominously beneath their feet as they explore deeper into the mansion's depths. As they enter a long abandoned ward, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to echo through the halls. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an otherworldly chorus that sends shivers down their spines. Suddenly, they come face to face with a ghostly apparition, a spectral figure with hollow eyes and tattered clothing. Its ethereal form glides towards them, its movements hauntingly graceful. Frozen with fear, they realize they are in the presence of something not of this world. With a collective scream, the friends turn and flee from the mansion, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark hallways, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly whispers follow, urging them to return to the darkness. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the mansion, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They vow never to speak of their night in the abandoned mansion again, haunted by the echoes of the forgotten souls that linger within its walls.
In the heart of the countryside, surrounded by dense, fog-laden woods, stood Blackwood Manor. The old mansion had been abandoned for decades, whispered to be cursed. The villagers spoke of eerie lights flickering in the windows and ghostly figures wandering the halls at night. A group of 5 friends, Emily, Jack, Sarah, Tom, and Lisa, decided to spend a night in Blackwood Manor to investigate the rumors. They arrived at dusk, their car crunching on the gravel driveway as they approached the looming dark structure. The friends pushed open the heavy wooden doors and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust, and the scent of decay was overwhelming. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the floorboards creaked under their weight. In the library, Emily found an old journal. The pages were brittle, but she managed to read about the tragic history of Blackwood Manor. It was once home to the Blackwood family, who mysteriously vanished one night, leaving behind a curse. As night fell, strange things began to happen. Lisa felt a cold hand brush against her back, but when she turned, no one was there. Jack heard whispering voices calling his name from the dark corners of the house. Desperate for answers, Sarah suggested a seance. They gathered in the parlor, holding hands around a makeshift altar. As Sarah chanted, the candles flickered, and a cold breeze swept through the room. Suddenly, a ghostly figure appeared, its face twisted in anguish. The spirit of the youngest Blackwood child revealed that the family was murdered by a jealous relative who then cursed the house. The child's spirit pleaded for help to break the curse and set them free. The friends searched the house for the relic mentioned by the ghost. In the attic, they found an old, ornate box containing a cursed amulet. As they touched it, the air grew colder, and the house seemed to groan around them. Following the ghost's instructions, they took the amulet to the family graveyard behind the mansion. They placed it on the Blackwood family grave and recited the incantation. The ground trembled, and a blinding light erupted from the grave. As the light faded, the vengeful spirit of the jealous relative appeared, furious at being exposed. It attacked the friends, but they stood their ground, determined to end the curse. Emily, holding the amulet, confronted the spirit, chanting the incantation. With a final, anguished scream, the spirit dissolved into the night. The air grew still, and the oppressive feeling lifted. The ghosts of the Blackwood family appeared, smiling gratefully before fading away. The curse was broken. As dawn broke, the friends left Blackwood Manor, forever changed by their experience. The house, no longer shrouded in darkness, stood silent and peaceful. They knew they had freed the souls trapped within,